welcome to the Sharon and Joe Show. My name is Sharon.
My name is Joe.
So last time I had Joe on the channel was a few weeks ago, and it was right before his big surgery. Now, I've talked a little bit about it on the channel, but why don't we hear from Joe himself? Joe, how'd it go?
It was a success. It was definitely, I'm a quick forgetter. Usually the anxiety of something I'm not looking forward to is worse than the actual what I have to go through. And
actually, I think that's a good point right at the beginning of the video. That's very true.
Yeah, and anxiety times like it's hypervigilance. And went through the surgery. It was successful. It was the last hurdle for all those you guys that have listened to Sharon or the Sharon and Joe Show know what both of us have been through. And this was about the last hurdle within this 3-year span where I had to go through hell. And what's the saying? Whenever you're going through hell, just keep going. Yes,
if you're going through, I think Winston Churchill said it. If you're walking through hell, keep walking. Don't stay where you are. That's very true. I've thrown off the good advice tonight.
And another thing that I learned, even with my recovery from alcoholism and stuff, as far as recovery processes, the only way through it is through it. You know, and to try to avoid it with drinking or substance abuse, or in my case, blaming the narcissist, whatever the case is that it took a lot of self-examination and looking at myself and a relationship with God. And it finally got me to a point where I was like life and death situation for me is now, man, it's just a zest for life, like a new freedom and a new peace.
Joe and I were talking about this a little while ago. I like the word hope. He didn't really like the word hope, so he might not use that, but I'm going to use hope. I think hope is important just personally. Joe and I have both been through it. The difference between Joe and I, or one difference between us, is that I'm an optimist, he is not. So I think when we're on the channel and we're talking about things, you can kind of get the best of both worlds. But in today's video, what I really want to talk about is, because I can't emphasize enough how crucial the surgery was to Joe's mental well-being. It was the hurdle of all hurdles. I was afraid going into this because I didn't know. I had hope. I do have hope. I believed in God. I believed it was going to be all right. But Joe was so stressed out and upset about this. I was nervous. I was afraid. But Joe got through it, and he has such a different attitude now. So when you go from the worst moments of your life, the worst years of your life, to feeling like, you know what, it's okay. I would love to have Joe talk to somebody who feels like you did, that, you know what, I'm not holding on. I'm barely holding on. If I can just make it through a couple of years, maybe my kids will be grown and out of the house, and then I can go, you know, just be by myself or whatever. Can you talk to somebody that feels hopeless, just that there's nothing left in life? It's too much.
Yeah, I think I don't call myself a pessimist. I'm definitely not an optimist. I like to be a realist, if you will. And the reason why I don't like to use the word, well, I like to use the word hope, but there's an irony with me. And this was all the tragedies and trauma I've been through in the last 3 years all stemmed from my childhood trauma, a lot of CPTSD. But let me get down to it as like, I was hopeless, and it was through that hopelessness, it brought up enough pain for me to cry out to God. And it was through that hopelessness, the irony of that's where I found hope. I have a high tolerance for pain, and like it got to the point where it was life or death. And
you know, when you say you have a high tolerance for pain, I just wonder what that means. Because I know you mean emotional pain, not necessarily physical pain.
Physical pain too.
But I feel like it's more, are you ignoring it or trying to pretend it's not happening, or just forget it? Or do you really have a threshold where it doesn't bother you to be in emotional pain enough to take action? I don't know if I'm saying that well enough, but what do you mean by a high threshold of pain?
It's hard for like a sober-minded person that's not like doesn't have an addictive personality to understand. It's like, so for the last 2 years, to give you an example, my ear was infected, like bad. And I waited till the very last minute to do anything about it. Like I pushed it off. When I was drinking and abusing substances, and back in my early teens, late 20s, mid 20s, I was in a lot of pain. You know, there was like it was something that I was a familiar friend, like something that was just, it was familiar. Any kind of change whatsoever, unconsciously, I was afraid of. Like, I wasn't afraid of death. I was more afraid of living. So like when it came to change, it was just something comfortable that I knew well. So being that way, something really, really it has to get to a breaking point for me to like be motivated to do anything whatsoever. So I don't know if that makes sense or not to you.
No, it does. No, it does. I get that. Like before, like I would just, that's always confused me when you said that, because I get it, but I don't. But I hear what you're saying. So
a sick form of like liking it. I remember when I first got sober, you guys, I was 25 years old, and I started getting into like recovery, the spiritual component of the physical, and the physical part, like I would train at the gym for hours and then go run 10 miles, almost to the point of, well, many times to the point of collapse. It was like it was a kind of weird, like a David Goggins kind of thing. It's like, it was good for me. And like my mentality was, well, if you're that pissed off at yourself where you got to drink every day and you want to slowly kill yourself, do it in a positive way. And then it was like, it's like addictive personality. Does that make sense at all? Where it's just like, it's to the extreme of self-inflicted injury because of my childhood, because I was told that I was the reason why my parents got divorced and my father left. And I was the reason why my mom drank every day. And
I think I get what you're saying. So it's kind of like you were able to handle this until you literally could not. There was no choice. Yes. You had to change because that was the only choice that you had.
Yeah, and I hope that makes sense. I tend to babble and talk, you guys, and I like to hear myself talk because I got this. I say I'm an egomaniac with an inferiority complex, but I don't have any malevolence in me. Hopefully it makes sense to somebody.
No, it does. I get that. I think you explained it well. So you got to the point with your ear then where you really didn't have a choice. I mean, you know what can I tell them what the doctor said?
Yeah, one of the doctors, the first doctor.
Actually, no, not that one. I want to talk about what the surgeon said just recently. Joe went to the doctor and they were just kind of checking him over to make sure the surgery had gone well during the recovery. His infection was so bad that the bone was wearing away and the skull. Like, I mean, that's how bad it was. So for you, it was like you were backed right up against the wall and you had no choice.
If it wasn't for you. Now, if part of my journey is that God led me to Sharon, and if it wasn't for Sharon, I wouldn't be where I'm at today. And eventually all roads lead back to God. But Sharon was a vital component of the way I see things. Like with that kind of attitude that I have as far as like the high tolerance for pain, my whole concept of life changed. Like pain could be a great motivator. For somebody like me, I take it to the extreme. And when I met you at that time, like the concept of, well, why don't you let love be a motivator? And it was before I met you that even I heard that suggestion from somebody like in a recovery room, specifically with codependence and narcissists. And I was like, wow, that's a cool concept. And the seed was planted. And shortly after I met you, but yeah, it was, you guys, it was a very, very, very dark spot. It was an avalanche, not just a snowball. Like all these things that were going on in my life. And if you've heard my story, I don't want to repeat myself, but this was like the last hurdle, because when I was a child, I had about 14 major reconstructive surgeries on my ear. And it directed my choices, my decisions. And I'm not blaming anybody, but the way I reacted to that, it wasn't good response. I just lashed out.
You know, you and I are now at a better point. You know, I mean, I guess that's kind of obvious. We're in a better point than we were. For me, if you know, there was a time when I was terrified and I didn't know what was going to happen. And there was a lot of fear, and I felt almost like I was just floating in the water, you know, and I was going this way or that way. And I had no control over my life. What really helped me tremendously is at some point, I started really following what I call the Holy Spirit. I started and I don't even know why I did this. I don't know. I just started doing it. And it was just a gift, thank God, that I just started making decisions. I would have a gut instinct and I would just do it. And over time, it led me out. You were a little bit different, but similar. So if you were going to talk to somebody who is at the worst point and thinks, I don't know what I'm going to do. I might not make it. What would you say to them?
Our Creator, I believe that when you speak out loud, there's a frequency that happens where our Creator could it just reaches him, and our Creator is faithful. That hopeless state is what got me to a point where I was in so much pain. I didn't want to live, and I was too scared to die, that I cried out to God. If you're there, even if you exist, if you don't, I need someone, because I was beyond human aid, and my best thinking got me in an entanglement for 20 years with a narcissist. And it was there that I started to build my relationship with the God of my understanding. I have a Christian background. I like to say I'm spiritual, not religious, but Jesus Christ is my Savior. But I began to develop a real relationship with God. And I began to understand that I'm not just tiny ants among millions that he just kind of overlooked. Like that he began to talk to me through people, places, and things. And I began to realize I have a purpose. And when I got out of that entanglement, I knew that I didn't do it. I was in an impossible situation. And knowing that and finding that relationship, like, if you cry out to God, like, he is faithful, he will hear you. And it's our job to make that relationship a reality. Like, I began to talk to him out loud in the morning. I got back into my Bible and I read out loud. And it was through that relationship that the obsessiveness with the narcissist began to dissipate, that he began to reveal himself in different ways. And I knew that he cared about me and he loved me. And
go ahead. I want to say something after.
And because that he cared about me and loved me, I began to understand that I am worth something, that I'm not this whatever the narcissist called me. And I began to look at myself and see my own defects and see how effed up I was. And it bought me time and it gave me an understanding. And here I am. So I just hung on. I found one little piece. And the gun on the table that I could use against myself was always like, later on, let's just see how this pans out. Do the possible, one foot in front of the other. I began to set goals. It was a struggle. It was long. But I knew that God didn't bring me this far just to drop me on my head. There was more to it.
Joe and I are just like all of you. We're people, right? We're human beings. Just like our dogs are similar. They're both dogs. There's nothing special about them above all other dogs. There's nothing special about us above all other people. I just want to tell you guys, Joe and I were taking this walk earlier and we were talking about this. And it was kind of humorous, but at the same time, we were both really serious about it. If you know our story, Joe and I literally, physically, in person, met 2 times before we moved in together. And we didn't just move in together and, we're in love or we're sexually attracted to each other. That wasn't just like why we did this. We had kids and animals and like homes and everything. It was a huge deal to other people. And I would probably
Rightfully
think,
so.
I was just going to say, to other people, it's absolutely insane to do what we did, to just literally, it's not quite like this, there was more to it, but pick up and just move to Ohio from New Hampshire, and just after meeting this guy and meeting him 2 times, talking on the phone, we just knew this was not, well, maybe, or I think so, or oh, I'm attracted to you, or that wasn't what it was. We both felt independent and then together that this was what God wanted. So when I told you earlier, I would listen to the Holy Spirit, and I just did it. At the point when I met you, Joe, I just knew. I knew, and it wasn't just wanting to be together. We wanted to put our families together. We thought this was best for our children, and we wanted to do this. We weren't like, well, we're just going to be together no matter what. That actually was the last thing in this. It was, we felt God wanted this.
Moving us.
And we just knew independently, and together we knew. So that would have been crazy to anybody else. So for you here, if you're thinking, well, yeah, but what am I going to do? Or can God do something for me? You don't know what he has planned for you. You don't know.
We were separately, independently, before we ever talked. We both separately were working on our codependent issues, heavy self-examination, I call shadow work, looking at our own defects, taking responsibility for our part, while managing children and family and this and that. And it was through the relationship with God that brought that, like, Sharon into my life. Now, I didn't have, and neither did Sharon, any want of being in another relationship after being in one for 20 years. Like, there was some kind of a hope for independence.
I was actually against her, just so you guys know. My personal belief at that point, like before I met Joe, or even when I first met him, there was like this part of me that wanted to get remarried, that wanted to be in a relationship. But I personally believed the best, healthiest thing is to wait until my children were out of my house. So like that would have been years from now. And that was my firm belief at this time. I just think it's important to say that.
And not only that, but it wouldn't matter if we were together or not. The most important relationship was the one with God. It was through that my self-worth and my self-esteem started to build. And it was the same with Sharon.
Well, the only reason I even mentioned that is just when you talked about God coming into your life and listening to God. That was not that you need to be in a relationship, but that was something that God had planned for us, and following God brought us to that point. So if you right now are trying to have your relationship with God, or you're trying to figure out what you should do, if you listen to that Holy Spirit, you don't know what God has planned for you. Bad things can happen in a moment, but good things can happen in a moment too. You don't know, and if you can hang on. I don't think God exists. I know he does, and I know he loves you, and I know he has a future for you. If he didn't have a future for you, you wouldn't be here right now. You wouldn't be listening to this channel. You would be somewhere else. I know he has a plan for you, and if you just hold on and listen to that, it might take a little time.
It takes practice.
But it's there.
It takes practice. Like, I literally had to make my faith a reality. I literally had to talk to God in the morning, at night. I call him Dad. Like, it's an intimate family relationship that I have. And all these things that happen to me, like there's a saying that the hottest and strongest fires forge the strongest blades. All of this brought character and wisdom and understanding, and so much that we can share with another human being that might be on our path, that they don't have to go as far down, or maybe at the bottom of the pits, living like in the bottom, like fully furnished and not even realizing it. Like, all these gifts and the self-esteem and just knowing like we could do anything now. Here I am at 50 years old. I want to go back to school, and I'm going to be working in a warehouse, and I was working in an office, and I don't care. Like, there's the possibilities are limitless. When you're forced to face your worst fears, it's like the greatest gift in the world, because if you can build a relationship with God, that's what's going to get you through it. And when you come out the other side, you're going to be a brand new person. That's being reborn.
And that's not just for us or for some people. It's for everybody. Joe always says, I can't remember the exact phrase that you say now, I'm blanking, where you say, the word but, or...
Oh, yeah. Anything, I always say that. It's called terminal uniqueness.
That's what I'm looking for, yeah.
When I used to listen to narcissist channels and stuff, and that's what actually sparked a little bit of, maybe there might be a possibility that I could get through this. And I would listen to some people, and I'd be like, yeah, but you had a car. My car was stolen from my ex, and you have money. Yeah, but you don't have kids. And anything after but is bullshit. It's like terminal uniqueness. Yeah, but you don't understand. I'm in this position.
The best thing you can do, that is the term I was looking for. The best thing you can do is just get rid of that thought process. Don't think that you're different than other people. We're all human beings. We've all been in this together. We all have had different experiences, but when you're with a narcissist, I know your narcissist, you know my narcissist, that they all have a commonality there, but there's nothing special about anybody that got out of their entanglements with narcissists.
Instead of relating to like a person's social status, what they have or don't have, relate to the feelings, relate to the despair and the anxiety and the worry and the depression, and relate to that, because it's through that you can connect. Love responds to love alone. Relate to the feelings that we have, and if you share the same feelings, there's a way out, and it starts with something much greater than yourself. And I say I was beyond human aid, and nobody could have came and saved me, and ain't nobody coming to save you. But it was through my desperation that I cried out to God, and he is faithful, and he did.
There's an answer for everybody. Literally, it's just holding on, having that faith, listening, because it doesn't happen overnight. That's the thing. It just doesn't. For Joe and I, it took a couple of years, but we got there. We got there. So for you too, like I said, there's a reason you are still here. There's something for you to still do, and you can get out just like I got out, Joe got out. There was no other reason than God wanted us out, and we listened to what he said.
The anxiety and the hypervigilance, I used to call Sharon up at 1 o'clock in the morning, having a panic attack. I used to have 1 to 2 a week. And I was scared about this and this. And we always used to tell each other, do you need to make a decision like right now? And the answer was, well, no. Well, do you have food in the fridge, like enough to feed the kids? Yes. Do you have a way to get your son to school? Yes. Are you sleeping in the bed? Yes. And after answering all those questions, like, holy shit, I got more than what I need. And I began to realize I've always had more than what I need. There was an abundance of it. And I started to realize, like, blessings, like I had an abundance of what I needed.
When you're afraid, you only see bad things. You only see the worst things in your life. But later, when you get past this point, you'll look back, and even in the worst moments, there was something good.
This channel is like a lighthouse to all those ships out there that they're coming in. We try to avoid them from crashing the rocks. You know, my prayers always used to be, God, please help me. God, please get me out of this. And it's done a 180. Now it's like, God, what can I do for you? Like, how can I be of service? And thank you for letting me be of service, because instead of me being in my head all day, I could immerse myself in somebody else's problems and see that I ain't got no problems, maybe challenges. A lot of, what was it? There was a saying I used to tell myself in my head, or a question, is it a catastrophe or is it an inconvenience? Thank God 9 out of 10 times, it's just an inconvenience.
All right, you guys, I'm going to end this now because I've been trying to have the Sharon and Joe show be a little bit shorter because we tend to drone on.
I draw on, that's it.
So guys, thank you so much for listening. Joe, thank you for coming on, and we'll have Joe on again soon. And actually, we're going to do a video. Maybe next time you come on, we can do a little update on the kids, because we have some news to tell you about some of our children.
Oh, yes. And my youngest turned 19 today. Thanks to Sharon. She made a cake and got him all kinds of gifts and stuff, because I've been working a lot. But just keep your prayers and thoughts out for him, just for him to accept God's will, because God's will is always what's best for us. He's going to be going into the Army. There's a lot of crap going on right now. Did I just tell you we were going to talk in the future about what's going on, and you're throwing it in right now? Well, it was his birthday today, so I was just saying happy birthday, John.
All right, so happy birthday to John, and we will talk to you soon, guys. Bye.